leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. Joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Fred, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ed.
And Chris Woodward, news reporter extraordinaire for American Family News.
How you doing?
Okay.
I'll go NPR.
You go. Yes, that's that the NPR drone. That kind of actually, I always thought that they did a good job on NPR.
This program is not brought to you by many donations and foundations you've not ever heard of.
That's right. That's right. Well, folks, it is Wednesday, July 24th. The year is certainly slipping away. I know slipping away is the right term. It feels to me like it's rocketing away. But perhaps, Fred, that is because we've had so much going on, and the last couple of weeks have just been extraordinarily busy news-wise in an already busy election year.
Well, election years tend to be busy, a lot happening, but this year you cannot compare what's been going on over the last several weeks to any other period in American political history. Let's face it, an attempted assassination on a political opponent who was president and wants another term in office. You have the current president who struggled through a debate. His party turns against him, and what I call the night of the long knives succeeds in getting him off the ticket.
His own political party. I don't think I've ever seen what has transpired that way.
And the stories are ongoing. Those just aren't incidents we reported on. There's now a lot of follow to all of this. On the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, is before a hearing in Washington today. Very interesting. I got to listen to a little bit of it before coming into the studio. Now, they are investigating Crooks, the guy who shot at the president and was eventually shot by a sharpshooter with the Secret Service. Wray says they're not investigating the Secret Service,
right,
and what the Secret Service did and didn't do leading up to the attempted assassination.
In terms of mistakes made, poor procedures, poor planning, all that's separate from what Christopher Wray and the FBI are looking at.
Yes, he made that very clear this morning. However, he was asked, okay, what do you know so far, Mr. Wray? What has your investigation given us? He confirmed, for instance, that the FBI has found 8 shells, spent cartridges, because people wanted to know how many shots was Crooks able to get off before he was taken down by that sniper. The other thing, some really interesting remarks from Christopher Wray on the drone. Crooks had his own drone that he put up in the air 2 to 3 hours before the assassination attempt, because they found that drone back in his car. So he flew the drone. Crooks flew this drone. He did not fly it over the grandstand where the former president was to speak, but he flew in that area around. But they found that back in the car. So he flew that drone, brought it down, put it back in the car.
Did they have some sort of footage that the drone had taken?
That was the interesting testimony. They know he transmitted pictures. Here's the interesting point. Who was he transmitting pictures to?
Right.
Was it just to himself, or was he sending this to somebody else? Because that's another question. Were there other people involved? And I know you can get involved in conspiracies and all of that sort of thing. So that I found very interesting. And then There are the communication devices, phones or whatever, encrypted messages. They have not been able to completely decipher those yet. He says they were very sophisticated. Ray was saying that it's one of the problems for FBI now, not only in this case, but encryption is getting more and more sophisticated.
Right.
So he was sending messages, Crooks was, to somebody while this is going on. So
he also had, right, I mean, from the week following the assassination attempt, I remember reading, I don't know whether this has changed or not. Sometimes the information we get is fluid. But that Crooks, and folks, we're talking about Thomas Matthew Crooks,
yes,
the young man, 20-year-old, who tried to kill former President Trump, but that he had 3 offshore bank accounts that
Yes.
were encrypted as well.
Ray did not testify to that this morning, but
that is still
yes,
what we know.
yes. So really fascinating. Crooks is what the picture that's being painted so far. Crooks is not just some crazy kid,
Right.
who got his dad's weapon and went to the roof and shot.
Right.
There's much more to this story that is yet to come. I mean, we had yesterday the resignation of the head of the Secret Service.
Yes.
Finally,
Kim Cheadle.
Kim Cheadle, after she was pummeled by both Democrats and Republicans at a hearing. But now we've got this whole other aspect of, okay, who is Thomas Crooks?
Yeah.
How much planning went into this? And why all of this sophisticated technology around all of this? So you've got that going on. And then perhaps Chris has a bit of the audio that was played this morning. There's what I saw on Fox and Friends this morning is a body cam on I think it was a local police officer who was talking to a Secret Service agent. This is before the shooting took place. And there's a conversation about, hey, there's a guy over there on the roof. So this goes to what a lot of people are very alarmed about. Secret Service informed about Mr. Crooks being on the roof. Why wasn't something done right away?
Yeah, there's a lot of audio on this topic we can discuss and continue to talk about on the show. Here now is audio of a witness talking to police the day that Trump was shot. Clip 14.
Yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him. Okay. That's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
He's the one that sent the pictures out. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on.
So we had the picture of that.
I got that
Okay,
picture.
and then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe.
Okay.
But he would be right inside that window. Physically seen this, sent the pictures, and coded out.
Okay.
Well, I'm not understanding that. I thought that was the clip of someone telling a Secret Service guy.
The picture that I saw, I'm not sure if this audio matches the picture that I saw this morning.
What was that audio of?
Well, the other audio was the one that has a lot of language in it that has been bleeped out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we won't play that until we can check it out, make sure it's okay to air. So we don't have the audio then of someone communicating, of a local law enforcement officer communicating.
That was the indication from the video that I saw this morning. Now,
is this during the hearing? This was played?
No.
This is just Fox.
This was just Fox and Friends.
Okay.
There's so much coming out because so many people have these smartphones now.
Yeah.
And part of the audio that I saw this morning and the visual to go with it, you can hear the shots being fired by Crooks in this. There's a whole lot of evidence for the FBI to work with at this point.
And it's always changing because the amount is changing because I saw a video, of course, we've all seen videos of the moment when President Trump was hit in the ear by one of the shots, one of the 8 shots. I saw some people like scattering a little bit behind President Trump, but I saw a lady who ducked for a second and got her phone out and is video with her phone. So that kind of footage makes its way sometimes a little more slowly to the investigating authorities and then becomes public.
Well, and the story keeps changing. Remember the day of, in the first 24 hours, we heard about the local police officer on a ladder getting up and looking at Well, it turns out the police officer wasn't on a ladder. He was being held up by another officer. So that's why he couldn't get to his gun, because
jostling.
all of this going on. So just beware, folks. The stories and the accounts can change.
Right.
Because you may see something from a phone video that looks like something, but it turns out to be something else.
Yes.
So we have to be very careful. And Christopher Wray, who's been worthy of a lot of criticism over the last 2 or 3 years, but I really do believe they are doing their best right now to get to the bottom of this. But it's fascinating to me, the drone, what was that being used for, who was getting the pictures, and number 2, these encrypted messages on these phones.
And let me just add this one thing. Chris, we will, as Tim always says, we will let you talk sometime here in this first segment. By the way, folks, Jenna Ellis will be with us at the bottom of the hour, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning. We'll be talking with her, at least initially, about Kamala Harris, but who knows, she may throw in some on the assassination attempt, because more information continues to unfold. But I will say, the idea of the drone, which has come out since that first weekend when the assassination attempt took place, but the thought of drones, because they're almost ubiquitous now. I mean, it's very easy to get one, but the thought of a drone flying above a speaker like President Trump, what does the Secret Service do in a case like that? And these drones can be turned into a deadly weapon.
They can drop things.
They can drop things, and so you wonder what kind of countermeasures the FBI or the Secret Service would have for something like that. So as technology changes, so do the threats.
Yeah.
Christopher Wray, by the way, you mentioning FBI director, is testifying before the House, but he talked about the fact that there is an elevated threat environment, something he has been saying for a couple of months now, at least a couple of months, that he's not sure who's in the country, and the expectation is that there are real dangers to the public safety because of terrorists. Chris, what else do you have?
Real quick, we are working to get the audio, or try to locate the audio that you guys were playing, and to help build off of what Fred and Ed have already discussed here with that body cam video. I have posted a link to a Fox story about that very issue. We are working to try to get you that audio.
And that is on Facebook
as we speak. Yes, sir. It is in both the Facebook comments section, and I have posted it on the Today's Issues Facebook page itself.
Okay. All right. Okay, so is that testimony continuing today?
They had to take a break just about 15, 20 minutes ago. They had to take a break in this hearing because members of the House were going back to the House for a series of votes on something.
Okay.
So they're in recess as of about 15 minutes ago.
All right.
But that testimony will continue.
Okay. And then Chris Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be addressing Congress today?
Yes, this very well could have been the lead story.
Yes.
I mean, there's like 4 lead stories every day now, and we just kind of pick one to begin the show with. But yes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to speak before a joint session of Congress, albeit a few people are going to be absent. That is at 1 o'clock Central today. You can watch it on C-SPAN. I have already posted the link from an AFN story about this, as well as the C-SPAN link. We will, Lord willing, if the Lord tarries, have coverage this afternoon of what Netanyahu had to tell members of Congress.
And Kamala Harris is not going to be.
No, she's not. And you would think she would be, given the fact that she's running for president of the United States, and they are our oldest and most trusted ally in the Middle East. But yes, Kamala won't be there. She had a, quote, scheduling conflict because she's going places. Several Democrats, in fact, are not going to be there because they're upset with Israel's war with Hamas. Bear in mind that Israel is retaliating because Hamas attacked them back in October. But anyway, I've got a good bit of audio here on the issue of Kamala and other Democrats snubbing Bibi in Israel. Let's begin with this one. It's Senator Lindsey Graham on the issue of Kamala and other Democrats saying we're not going to be there. Clip 1.
It empowers the enemies of Israel. It makes America weaker in the eyes of our allies. I cannot tell you, she flunked the first test of trying to be president of the United States by picking the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, pleasing them more than standing behind the Prime Minister of Israel. This is a chillingly bad decision.
I don't disagree with that. Sometimes members of opposing parties can be unfair. I mean, it is kind of a blood sport. So we want to make you bleed so that you look bad. I understand that's part of the political game, but she is vice president. This is an important visit. She is now being touted as the person who at the Democratic Party convention here in August is probably going to replace Joe Biden as the nominee. Fred, I think it's absolutely fair to criticize her for not showing up and at least meeting with him afterwards. She's not going to even meet with them afterwards, right?
Well, there is a report that tomorrow both President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will meet with Netanyahu at the White House.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
About
However, when Netanyahu arrived in the United States on Monday, no Kamala Harris to meet him at the airport, no Biden, no Secretary of State. Is
that traditionally what happens? Somebody is met?
When a head of state arrives here in the United States, at least somebody of that stature would be meeting him.
Right.
So
now I don't feel good.
No, Kamala Harris, I know she wants to get out there and get the publicity. She's on the campaign trail, et cetera, et cetera. But to not normally the protocol calls for the vice president to be there for a speech, a joint session of Congress. Right. Calls for her to be there. Surely she could rearrange. Now, I think she's, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, scheduled to meet with a black sorority. Mm-hmm. That's what one of the visits today is all about.
Well, this has been on the calendar, the Netanyahu visit, for a while.
Yes. And given what's going on, they're at war on 7 fronts.
Yeah. That is, she's the vice president is the president of the Senate.
Yes.
Technically speaking. I mean, they don't have to always be there for the business conducted by the Senate.
Right.
So for a joint session of Congress for a visiting dignitary to address Congress, and like you said, Fred, under the circumstances, an ally engaged in a war, you would think she would be.
Well, if it was Zelensky of Ukraine, can you imagine?
Right.
Not being around for that?
Even if you have issues with Israel and how it's responded to its war with Hamas, which, again, Israel is retaliating because Hamas attacked them and killed women and children back in October. Even if you have issues with Israel's handling of that situation, you still send a person there because you're wanting them to come to the table. And by snubbing them, it makes them less willing to come to the table, right? And if you're going to roll out the red carpet for a dictator like Xi Jinping or somebody from China when he comes to D.C., you have to do the same thing for Benjamin Netanyahu, regardless of what some voters in Dearborn, Michigan may think about the situation.
Right. And I think Lindsey Graham's exactly right. This treatment of Netanyahu is the product of the Democratic Party either kowtowing to or being afraid of this radical wing of the Democratic Party that it's not just Dearborn, Michigan.
Right.
It's those protesting outside the Holocaust Museum, which I saw a picture of in Boston.
Yes.
Just this week. All right. What else you got on
Speaking of Kamala, people have already began to say that if you don't like her, you are either sexist or racist or both, because she is a female and she is a person of color. Somebody who is a female and also a person of color is Stacey Washington, who went on television yesterday to say, I do not care one bit about Kamala's gender or skin color. It's about what she has stood for and supported. Clip 6.
I prefer to look at policy. Kamala Harris supports the Green New Deal. She supports DEI. She supports the open southern border. She bailed criminals out of prison who went on to rape and murder other people through that huge fund, I think $65 million, Lawrence. So when we're talking about who she is and what she's doing, that's the conversation I want to have. The fact that she's Black and a woman or Indian and a woman, those are irrelevant to me because policy trumps those things all day. I prefer to think with my mind, not my skin tone.
Oh, it's kind of okay. Up the mic there.
Yeah, it's that last part is a kind of an odd metaphor. Prefer not to think with my skin tone. I understand the point she's trying to make, that this is a policy issue that we should approach in a logical fashion and not have an emotional reaction just because someone is of a similar, a Hamilton, we say, melanated skin tone.
Yeah.
Well, the problem for Kamala Harris is that she really can't campaign on what the Biden administration has done to this country over the last 3.5 years. Does she really want to go out there and talk about what a great job we did on the border? Does she really want to go out there and talk about grocery prices and what's happening with mortgages and all of that sort of thing? Does she really want to go out there and talk about climate change? You know,
I don't think she can campaign and try to defend those clear policy failures on the part of the Biden administration, but she can't run from it either. If she says, well, I disagreed with Joe all this time, but he wouldn't listen to me, then nobody's going to buy that.
I really didn't want to be the border czar, but Joe made me.
Well, that's kind of what it looks like when he assigned it to her, but that doesn't matter. You have to do what's best for the country, and coming up with a good policy on the southern border is what a border czar should do. She failed, and that's going to leave the question in voters' minds. What else will she fail at?
Well, here's another thing that's kind of coming out from the Trump camp on this. They are going to go after her for her assessment of Joe Biden, that he is sharp as a tack,
right?
And I'm with him every day. And like Karine Jean-Pierre said, I'm with him every day. He's just as sharp as can be. So was she lying back then?
Yeah.
Because now she's all in on she's not criticizing the Democrats who put the proverbial knife in Joe Biden's back to get rid of him, to get him to step down from the ticket. So there's a whole bunch of things that the Trump campaign can hit her with.
Yeah, that you would think that would be a question in a debate if Harris and Trump have one. Trump wants to have one. He wants to have several. He said as much this week. You would think that would be a question from one of the moderators. How can the people trust you when you said this, but then your party turned on him or whatever else? I doubt that the moderators bring it up, which means Trump does need to somehow work it in. Maybe not at the beginning.
Oh, he will.
But at some point, he needs to. You can't trust this lady.
He's going to say, we all saw Joe Biden falling apart. And Kamala Harris was saying he was in great shape. Kamala lied the whole time. We all know what we saw. She lied. She's a liar. What else is she lying to the American people about?
Yes.
Hey,
I mean, that is going to happen, which raises the question, does Kamala Harris debate Donald Trump if she gets the nomination, which it increasingly looks like she will.
Hey, speaking of Kamala and the border czar situation, one of the things Dems are saying is that she was never named the border czar. Republicans, you're just being mean to her. She was never named the border czar. Quit trying to put that on her. If you look up the definition of czar, in addition to being an emperor of Russia back in the day, a czar also means a person appointed by government to advise on and coordinate policy in a particular area. So let's go back to 2021 when Joe Biden tapped VP Harris to lead response to border challenges. He, in effect, by definition, made her the border czar.
I think all the Democrats are saying, and this doesn't fly either, is she didn't have the official title of border czar. That's splitting hairs.
It really is.
She was the border czar.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to come with an official title. She was in charge of the border, and she failed miserably, and she's got to defend that failure if it's at all possible. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, will be our guest for about 15 or 20 minutes. We are going to start off talking about Kamala Harris, Who knows where the conversation with Jenna will wind up? We just don't know. You'll have to tune back in to find out.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
In 1782, James Price, a British scientist, announced that he had discovered a method of changing base metals into silver and gold. He was honored by King George III, and his accomplishment was acclaimed by many. But when members of the Royal Society asked him to repeat his experiment, his response was committing suicide by drinking poison. Now, what's that got to do with us? Well, you know, many people are like that when it comes to public worship. They boast about their ability to worship the Creator at home or traveling or fishing or on the golf course or any other number of places. They don't need to attend public worship, they say. But when it comes time to back up their boasting with facts, they often find that they commit suicide of their souls. I can think of 3 good, solid reasons why we should attend public worship regularly. First of all, there's the need for fellowship. Man cannot live alone. He needs fellowship with others. John Donne once wrote, "No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." This is true of worship as well as other areas of life. James Clark stated in a newsletter for Presbyterian men, "Man is a religious animal, and if he holds aloof from public worship, he starves and stunts his highest instincts. If a man is to come to his full stature, he must come to it inside the church." Of course, he meant the fellowship of the church and not the church building. The second need for public worship is that of scholarship. Rare indeed is the person who grows in his knowledge and understanding of our Maker apart from the church. I've met several people who have stated that they had no need for the church, that they could make it by myself. I don't know what they were making of themselves, but it was not persons true to the Creator's desire. They usually ended up making self-serving individuals. The other reason that I feel the need for public worship is exactly that, worship. Man will instinctively worship something. How he directs his instincts will determine what he worships. Without the guidance and direction which comes from public worship, he usually satisfies his hunger with some substitute for the real God. Of course, one reason so many stay away from public worship is that it's a threat to them. They may have to change, and change comes slowly and reluctantly for many. It's a dangerous thing to attend public worship for those who are satisfied with themselves. There is always the chance God will break through their protective shield and soften their resistive spirit. These, then, are the reasons I believe in public worship. I call them the 3 ships: fellowship, scholarship, and worship. I know I can't make silver and gold from base metals, and I certainly don't want to commit suicide of my soul. It's the most lasting part of me I have.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. Psalm 139, 23 through 24.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week, joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. Jenna Ellis host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, will be joining us shortly. All right. So in the previous segment, we mentioned some video about what happened in the aftermath of the assassination attempt on former President Trump after the young man who tried to kill him, Thomas Crooks, was killed by this Secret Service sniper, I think, that was the one who shot him.
On another roof.
On another roof. And so Steve Jordahl, Chris, you texted him. He got us the video, the audio.
For people watching at home, I wasn't just texting randomly during the show. I was trying to coordinate with my brother from another mother, Steve, to try to get us that audio.
So, Fred, set this up for us. What are we going to hear? You saw this video.
I saw this. This was 6:30 Central Time on Fox and Friends this morning. All right. So what you see in this video, and it appears the gentleman with the body cam that is recording this conversation, he has fatigues on of some type. I don't know whether he is a Secret Service man in full uniform or if it's a local police officer. I can't tell from that video. So he is having a conversation on a roof with a gentleman who has a black suit on and a white shirt and a dark tie.
Yes.
All right. So I'm assuming that is Secret Service. They are kind of having discussions, and this is I'm assuming within minutes after Thomas Crooks has been shot and killed.
And and Crooks is, his body is lying at their feet, right?
Yeah, we don't see the body. In
right.
this video. Okay, just to make that clear.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Clip 15.
The guys that saw them filming were like, oh, they were filming us, and then filming the guy up on the roof, and then filming us. And then when shots started firing, they tried to run away. He's like, isn't that what everybody would do that has a phone? I'm not saying they weren't involved, but you know what I mean? Like that.
It's up in the air right now, right?
Right. So I got no problem detaining them. But again, I'm just trying to detain those guys, find out what they know, who they are, whatever. I'm trying to get clear information to relay back to DC.
Bring control to the water tower.
We have one shooter deceased. I think we have 3 victims in the crowd. Did you guys hear that too?
I'm not sure.
So I heard 1 deceased, 2 life flighted.
I know 2 helicopters are taking off.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm a little confused. So I understood that last part of that. Whoever was speaking, are they saying that there were people who did not appear alarmed at what was going on? What was that?
I'm not sure whether they're talking about people on, spectators on the ground.
Okay.
So all of this is going to have to come. It's kind of imagine if you have a puzzle on a table.
Yeah.
And right now they're trying to put the pieces together.
And then someone comes and dumps another bucket of puzzle pieces
and says, "Wait a minute, this doesn't fit." All right, so basically what you were hearing just moments after Thomas Crooks was killed by the Secret Service sniper, you have these 2 officials, we believe a Secret Service and perhaps a local police officer, having a conversation on the roof as to what just transpired.
Okay.
So we have the deceased over here, the shooter. We have 3 people killed. So this is all within 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
Crunch. So it's just another piece of the evidence that is out there that FBI Director Christopher Wray and his people are dealing with right now.
And tons of still unanswered questions.
Oh, my. Because don't forget, there's 2 other investigations. There's an internal Secret Service investigation, and then the Inspector General of Homeland Security is doing a separate investigation of all of this.
Okay.
So one of the questions that was asked of Christopher Wray this morning, it took us 2 years, the FBI, through the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait 2 years for this.
Right.
We want to know information and be kept up to date.
Well, Kimberly Cheadle in her testimony said, it's going to take 60 days.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody who's doing her own investigation is Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time on AFR. Jenna, good morning to you.
Good morning, and great to be with you guys.
Listen, we do want to talk to you about Kamala Harris, but What is the latest that you've heard about the assassination attempt? FBI Director Christopher Wray undergoing scrutiny before Congress about some of the threats facing our country. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I had a Congressman Michael Cloud from Texas on yesterday, and of course, he was part of that congressional hearing where the now, thankfully, former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheetle, or as people online are calling her, Kimberly Cheetos or Doritos, because she should go back to guarding Doritos as the former head of security with that, which I think is better. I mean, guard a bag of potato chips. She probably can't even do that effectively. But he was talking about how even Congress doesn't really have good answers at this point. And when we're all sitting here agreeing with people like AOC that 60 days out for a report is way too late, especially when we're, less than 4 months away from the election. And the Secret Service is now telling Trump not to hold outdoor rallies. I mean, there's just so much here that we don't have answers on. I think that we have more questions currently than we even have answers.
Well, we were talking in the last segment that the threat environment, the words of FBI Director Wray, really is frightening. Now, on the one hand, I tend to put my tinfoil hat on sometimes and think, well, I wouldn't be surprised if there are people within the Secret Service, in parentheses, the deep state, who would like Trump not to have public rallies out in the open because those are incredibly popular and usually filled with tens of thousands of people. But on the other hand, I understand the concern as well amongst those in the Secret Service who truly are concerned with keeping our public servants safe, because this whole idea of a drone being used by crooks over the environment before the former president was speaking, that ramps up the potential dangers, because I don't know what the Secret Service would do if someone wanted to use a drone to take Trump out. I mean, that kind of thing happens overseas.
Well, I mean, this begs so many questions. Why they didn't have the airspace over the outdoor rally secured. I mean, even if it's an indoor rally, have that airspace secured. And there are ways of doing this. I mean, I have been with President Trump when he was President Trump at these rallies, and have been on board Air Force One with all of the security, all of the secured airspace, seeing all of this, having everybody go through the magnetometers. I mean, all of the security that surrounds an asset of the Secret Service is no small thing. And so just as a layperson, I mean, I have never been in law enforcement, any sort of security apparatus type of job, but as someone who has been an asset themselves, having protective detail and also being around President Trump with his protective detail, I mean, just from my own personal experience and observations, the level of gross negligence that I think we can question whether or not it was intentional negligence is just staggering. I mean, to not secure the airspace, allow a drone, allow this kid that was known to be a threat 30 minutes before he even walked on stage and not even delay the rally. I mean, Trump, nobody would have even thought, for 2 minutes if he was an hour delayed coming out. That's just how it works sometimes at Trump rallies. I mean, not to have the rooftop secured, not having anyone on the water tower. I mean, all of these things, there were so many questions. But the question I keep asking is, I would love to know how many of the immediately prior outdoor rallies of Donald Trump, like let's say just the last 10 that he's had, have they had the same equivalent type of security failures, and just by divine intervention and the sovereignty of God, there haven't been potential assassins there? Or was it just this Pennsylvania rally where a sniper happened to be? Because then you don't get into the level of, all of these coincidences. Now you're talking more, we're looking at something far more nefarious going on.
I've been, because as these puzzle pieces are getting poured onto the table as time goes on, I've seen testimony from people who've been interviewed who said, listen, we were driving our vehicle around the area to find a good parking space, and then we were watching with people. We were in clear view of the president. Nobody ever came to check us out to see if we had weapons or what we had. That's just mind blowing to me.
It's beyond failures. I mean, and again, even for me, it's somebody who doesn't have any law enforcement experience. If you had given me the resources of the Secret Service and I had planned, then I would have at least known that that level of a shot with that type of building should have been within the secured perimeter. I mean, that's just literally a no-brainer. So it is staggering incompetence. And to also see former director Kimberly Cheadle testifying in front of Congress with this very cavalier, almost indifferent attitude and just saying, well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if any reasonable person had access to the information that she does after 9 days, anyone remotely competent would have had more answers for Congress than she did.
You know, Christopher Wray this morning, Jenna's Fred here, also talked about the phones and the encrypted messages, and he couldn't go beyond that because they were so sophisticated. Yeah, it gives rise to all kinds of conspiracy. I mean, was Crooks acting alone? Who was he communicating with? Because Christopher Wray this morning said that Crooks, from that drone, he was transmitting pictures, but we don't know who was receiving those pictures. So is Christopher Wray telling us there could have been other people involved? I mean, that's the more we are learning, the more it's feeding into, and I try to be very careful about conspiracy theories. The more it feeds into, at least we better investigate if Crooks was acting all alone.
Right. And what's really fascinating about that and this potential conflict now between the testimony of Christopher Wray versus the testimony of Kimberly Cheadle is that the only question that she was asked that she was willing to directly respond to with absolute certainty was that this shooter was acting alone. And that to me is interesting. How could she possibly know that if she doesn't know any of the other details that she's claiming she doesn't?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My first thought, now I just heard this from Fred during the previous segment, that the FBI is having trouble cracking the encryption.
Yes.
On his phone?
It was a communication device.
Communication device. I'm thinking, how does a 20-year-old? I mean, I don't even know if there are Radio Shacks anymore, but you don't go down to Radio Shack and get a burner phone with encryption. I wouldn't think that the FBI can't immediately crack.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing about that, though, I mean, that gets into a broader policy discussion where, even Apple and some of these, these other big tech organizations have purposefully tried to say, no, you have privacy in your devices, even if there is potential evidence of criminal conduct on your phone. We are not going to give the password or allow law enforcement access. So even something as simple as my iPhone, it's not anything that I've done with it. It's that the device itself comes secure enough that law enforcement generally cannot penetrate it without a password and so forth. So that part of it really doesn't surprise me. And as much as, we would love to see what's on that from just a general 30,000-foot policy perspective, I am very much for data privacy and not having law enforcement be able to so easily access content.
Yeah. So you have to get a warrant. And even then there might be a fight with some of the social media
or even an ability, because Apple has consistently said, listen, we don't even keep the technology that we can access someone's personal phone so that we have to tell law enforcement, sorry, we can't help, so that then they don't open themselves up to further potential liability. So yeah, it's a really interesting policy discussion.
All right, let's switch gears here and talk about Kamala Harris. Chris, you've been waiting patiently.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, Jenna, what's your initial? Give me your initial reaction to Kamala Harris. Do you think she is absolutely now going to be anointed as the nominee at the convention? And then, Chris, you have some interesting audio. We'll get to Jenna's reaction to some of these things that Kamala Harris herself has said in the past. Jenna, what's your first blush reaction?
Well, I think there's no question she will be the nominee. As of yesterday, she has now secured enough delegates that she will be the presumptive nominee. And it's fascinating to me that Democrats who have consistently said democracy is on the ballot have now anointed a person who nobody has voted for. The last time she was on a ballot got less than 1% of the voting base. And now suddenly Democrats are completely okay with this, even though this disenfranchises their entire primary. But they're okay with it because they hate Donald Trump that much.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I've never seen anything like what we have seen unfold here, where a political party goes and protects the candidate, Joe Biden, lying through their teeth the whole time. Everybody with 2 eyes and 2 ears could see that Joe Biden was not up to the job, but they lied over the last 6 months. Oh, absolutely. He runs the table, primary after primary, and then the party itself, on the basis of one debate, basically knifes him in the back like he was Julius Caesar.
Yeah. And it's really, and this has definitely never happened in exactly the same fashion, but interestingly, this whole concept of a brokered convention and what happened in the presidential election of 1968 is actually what led to the primary process that the Democrats have implemented since then, and Republicans then in 1972 went ahead and adopted that same process because current President Lyndon B. Johnson announced he wouldn't run for re-election, and his then current sitting vice president, Hubert Humphrey, secured the Democrat nomination in 1968 despite not entering any primaries or caucuses. And a lot of the Democrats at the time were concerned about legitimacy in a kind of process where regular Americans don't participate. And yet now they're suggesting that Kamala Harris is somehow a legitimate selection when historically the Democrats not only disfavored that type of brokered convention in 1968, but they actually changed their process for more transparency. But here's the really fascinating, and this is where I just love history, because Democrats didn't win the 1968 election. The former vice president, then Richard Nixon, who was the Republican nominee, defeated the current incumbent vice president, Humphrey. And Trump has been compared to Nixon in a lot of other ways and for a lot of other reasons in the past. So will history repeat itself and a Republican former executive branch officer defeat a current Democrat VP incumbent who, in the same fashion as Hubert Humphrey, didn't enter any of the primaries or
That's
caucuses?
very interesting.
This election
Isn't that
season is why I haven't slept since last year.
And don't think you're going to get any more
Yeah,
sleep between
yeah.
now and November.
It's true.
Chris, some of the things that Kamala Harris has said in the past could be problematic going forward to November, and then we'll get play to your heart's content, and each time we'll get some comment from Jenna.
I believe I will. Here's one from Kamala back in the day talking about ICE. Clip 5.
Abolish ICE. Yeah. Is that a position that you agree with?
Listen, I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
You support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
Real quick, one other thing here for anybody that might say, well, she wasn't running for president at the time, or, you know, this time's different. Any kind of excuse now. Here's what she had to say yesterday in Milwaukee, clip 13.
And in this campaign, I promise you, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week.
So what record? Hey, Jenna, she said that basically she is willing to consider scrapping ICE. That doesn't mean necessarily she would replace it with nothing, but that she is open to giving people who are here legally or illegally all the benefits that accrue to American citizens, whether they pay taxes or not. That's going to show up in some Republican ads, eh?
Yeah, well, and let's not forget that she was the appointed border czar, and now Axios is rewriting history in an Orwellian fashion, claiming that no, that was just a Republican tag on her, but yet literally their own exact same reporter who claims that had a piece about 2 years ago in the very same publication saying that she was the border czar. So, there's a lot of Orwellian hypocrisy going on right now. And of course, Republicans are going to attack her policy positions and all of that. But here's the thing, is that Democrats have always been, very pro globalism, pro open borders, pro a Marxist utopia. And the second clip that you played, about her saying, oh, I'm all for securing, public. One, does that include the unborn public safety? I'd love to know the answer to that question. But second, does all of this public, that goes right into this entire Marxist, communist, Leninist, Maoist notion that the state is the parent and that we are all subservient, and there's no such thing as individual property rights, there's no such thing as parental rights, there's no such thing as self-government. It all comes down to the bourgeois and the proletariat and this whole class warfare system. That's what she's going for. And if Team Trump, and also us as conservatives, if we are very serious about actually evidencing and proving who Kamala Harris is, it's not about attacking her specific record on any of these comments. It's about showing comprehensively she has always fundamentally had the same worldview, which is not just liberalism, it's communism, it is Marxism, and I would go a step further from the biblical worldview. It's literally Satanism and Luciferianism. And I did an entire segment on Monday that people should listen to from my show, talking about her Satanist incantation from the occult in some of her what people think of as ballad and her hand gestures. It's actually a Luciferian incantation. But the bottom line is that her entire worldview goes back to the Garden of Eden, that we can be like God, we can make our own utopia, we are God. And who is the we in this instance? It is the elitists, the very same people that brokered the deal to install her as the Democrat nominee anyway. So this goes fundamentally to a clash between not only right and wrong, but good and evil. And it's not just about one policy position. It's about her overall view of government, which is you will own nothing, you'll be happy, you will shut up and take it.
Yeah, everything that Jenna says, is I believe, something that in particular evangelical voters need to think about. Yeah. But also, some of these words, when she talks about, yes, I believe in public education for everybody in the country, I believe healthcare, all of that sort of thing. This has already caused the Democrats some problems. Has these illegals, tens of thousands of them, had made their way into Democrat strongholds,
and more coming,
like Chicago and New York, we have had black residents who normally, traditionally vote Democrat up in arms. What it's doing to their school systems.
Right.
Their kids are being negatively impacted already by the thousands of these kids, of these illegal immigrants coming into the system, and the system cannot handle it. And their kids are being impacted by this. Chicago, New York, Minneapolis. This is going to be a problem. If she stands by these political points that she's made through the years, this is going to perhaps cost her in constituencies that the Democrats need to win.
45 seconds, Jenna.
If they can connect that policy directly back to Kamala Harris, because what you're seeing is an overt attempt to use her skin color to say, I look like you, therefore I'm the champion of you. And Democrats have been very successful at pushing that in the past. And so it's going to be very difficult, quite frankly, for conservatives to educate these people to say, let's connect what you're experiencing, what you hate, the policy, to the appropriate candidate that's responsible for that. That's our job.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question, 15-second answer. Do you think Kamala Harris is going to be a pushover in the election? A lot of people think she's a joke. Do you think she's a pushover?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the worst thing we can do is underestimate her and the millions and millions of dollars behind her.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Jenna, thank you so much for being on with us today. Who you got coming up tomorrow? Do you know yet?
We actually don't know yet. We're still in the middle of doing the show because it's going to be interesting with the speech today, and then of course Bibi Netanyahu coming up at 2 p.m. So a lot of news to cover tomorrow.
Thank you, Jenna. Folks,
Thank
we're going
you.
to take a 5-minute break for news, and when we come back, Steve Paisley Jordahl will be in, and guess what? More news to talk about.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
If God could speak, what would he say? The Bible subjects itself to historical verification.
He says, we saw this. We go to the Bible wanting to hear what the living God has to say to us.
When God speaks, what does he say?
The God who speaks. Visit stream.afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Congress continuing to press law enforcement officials about the actions surrounding the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, speaking at a committee hearing.
There are a lot of unanswered questions about the security failures that day. Questions about decisions made before the rally, questions about actions during the rally, and questions about statements made after the event concluded. Why was the president's security detail denied requests for extra resources? Why weren't all the buildings secured? There were a finite number of buildings that needed to be secured. Why wasn't that done? Why was the president allowed to walk out on the stage when there was a suspicious person on the property?
FBI Director Christopher Wray spoke before the House Judiciary Committee about his investigation.
There's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened and why will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned.
Vice President Kamala Harris skipping the speech from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to a joint meeting of Congress this afternoon and will be speaking at a campaign event in Indiana. Florida Congressman Greg Steube says the vice president's absence should send a pretty strong message to the American people about the Democratic Party.
That should tell the tall tale of where they have fallen to the far left progressive side of their party. They are so afraid of the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian part of their party that they don't even want to show up for Netanyahu's speech to our Congress.
Vice President Harris wants badly to beat President Harris, and one area she's working hard in to get out the vote involves abortion.
Speaking to a rally yesterday in Milwaukee, Vice President Kamala Harris said that as president, she will sign a law that restores what she calls reproductive freedoms. Christy Hamrick of Students for Life Action was not surprised.
Vice President Kamala Harris is radically pro-abortion. She is not pro-choice because that would not go far enough.
Hamrick said Kamala Harris fought states' rights when she was a senator, and while she was Attorney General in California, Harris went after David Daleiden to criminalize his undercover videos about Planned Parenthood.
She is running around the country screaming her support for abortion as her one and only accomplishment, and has been at the head of an administration that hasn't been about codifying Roe, which would be bad. It has been about ending conscience rights, about ending states' abilities to pass laws. It's been about throwing peaceful pro-life praying grandmothers into federal prison.
I'm Chris Woodward.
2 California teachers who filed a lawsuit over school secrecy could soon get more allies involved in the case. More from Bronson Woodruff.
Thomas More Society attorneys representing California teachers Elizabeth Mirabelli and Lori Ann West have asked a federal court to let more teachers, parents, and a school district all be part of this lawsuit. They're also asking the court to upgrade the suit to class action status. The suit is Mirabelli v. Olson. The 2 Escondido Union School District teachers originally brought the suit against their California school and state officials. They said school district policy illegally requires them to lie to parents about their students' gender dysphoria. Paul Jonah is special counsel for Thomas More Society and partner at Lamandry and Jonah.
The California governor just signed into law AB 1955, which purports to eliminate the possibility of a school district passing a policy that would allow for teachers to disclose to the parents of their students the fact that those students have a gender identity issue at school.
Jonah said it would be a very common sense and logical policy if parents were required to be notified of this by teachers. In fact, he said that many school districts in California have decided to pass policies like this.
In September of 2023, a federal judge found that the policies the state was pushing, which are parental exclusion policies, these are policies that do the exact opposite, require teachers to withhold that information from parents.
He said the court in their case determined those policies are likely unconstitutional.
They've done everything possible to ignore the court's order, essentially.
Jonah said his team has a pending motion with the court on this. They expect a ruling any day. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
On Wall Street, the S&P 500 is down 1.3%. The Dow fell 342 points, and the Nasdaq Composite down 2%. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Join us for the second annual AFA at the Ark.
Myself and Tony Ventagliano, his family, and my family, and several of the other staff members at AFA.
Tickets include transportation from the hotel to the museums, both tours, and special presentations by Answers in Genesis speakers. AFA has reserved a block of rooms at a discounted price with the Marriott Cincinnati Airport Hotel. To register, go to afa.net/events and join us for AFA at the Ark.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I am joined in studio by Fred Jackson and now Steve Paisley-Jordahl.
Hey.
Hey, folks, I have neglected, usually Tim asks me to say this, so I've neglected to say it this week. You can watch the live video stream of this show. Yes, you can. There are several ways for you to do that. You can go to Facebook and search for Today's Issues. You can go to YouTube. Brent Creeley, our producer, we're still on YouTube, or are we off?
We're on for now.
We're on for now. Okay, as long as I don't say ivermectin. You search for Today's Issues live. If you want to watch the live video stream on YouTube, you can go to our own streaming service, stream.afa.net, stream.afa.net. Lots of other great content there if you go to stream.afa.net. Or you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and search for American Family Radio, and whatever show is live streaming, video-wise, you can watch it on X. So I have done my duty, at least on Wednesday, to let you know where you can watch the live video stream. And as Tim always says, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to watch a bunch of middle-aged old guys?
Anybody would, but that's just me.
I'd love to be middle-aged, but I'm not even middle-aged anymore.
I identify.
Yes, you identify.
I identify as 30.
As middle-aged? Okay. Let me know how that goes.
Wait a minute. That might jeopardize my Social Security. I changed my vote.
I identify as 30 years old, and until at some point my body quits and says, "Who are you kidding?"
That's right.
And that'll be all.
Reality does catch up with these whole identification thing.
Yes,
it really does.
Reality is a brutal teacher, as I always say. All right, Steve Jordahl.
Let me just start with a couple things that I've been watching, kind of one eye on this hearing of Christopher Wray. And it's the same kind of thing as, for the most part, as yesterday when it was the Secret Service head. The Democrats are trying to make this about gun control. But Christopher Wray, though, is being a lot more forthcoming than was the FBI, the Secret Service director. One notable exchange, Jerry Nadler tried to blame Trump for his own assassination.
What?
Yeah.
How did he try to swing that?
Well, Republicans, it should. You would think that they would not want political violence. There's no surprise that this happened if they're talking about bloodbaths and.
Oh,
yeah,
that old trope. My understanding is Trump was talking about economic bloodbaths.
He was. And I think Nadler knows that.
Yes.
Also, so you know that Benjamin Netanyahu this afternoon is going to be addressing Congress, the joint session of Congress. A lot of Democrats are going to boycott that. But he is staying apparently at the Watergate Hotel, which actually is a hotel
Yes,
and,
I passed
and a functioning
it.
one.
I've passed it on a number of occasions. When you, I forget what convention or what conference I was at, but you drive right past that hotel.
Yeah. Well, overnight, the Palestinian Youth Movement, the D.C. Palestinian Youth Movement, brought a ton of maggots and crickets and released them throughout the hotel, and then started pulling the fire alarm overnight, all night.
Oh, those crazy kids. So this is so they found out where he was staying.
Yeah.
And ruined the hotel for everybody.
Just about.
You know, it reminds me of, and listen, I am a full supporter of the First Amendment and peaceful protests. Okay, that's part of what makes this country great. But destructive protests, you're not. First of all, those aren't protected by the First Amendment. I don't think, and I don't think you help yourself. Just like all these individuals, Fred, that want to protest environmental policies by throwing paint on famous paintings in a museum. You're not helping your cause.
Gluing themselves to highways,
yes,
and all of that sort of thing. No, they get praise in the mainstream media, which is very leftist.
Right.
But if they're looking for support from the general population, i.e., the voters, that's the way to lose it.
Right.
Absolutely. I think the environmental movement has gone way too far.
Right.
And it's going to bounce back on them. When you look at the Biden policies, his green plan, it's not working out there. And you don't get these stories from the mainstream media. People have, back several months ago, Hertz start selling off their electric vehicles.
No one wanted to rent them.
No one wanted to rent them. There is the problem that charging stations are few and far between, despite the Biden administration spending millions, they said.
Well, billions.
Yes.
They had access to billions. Remember, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation head, said when asked, well, how many billions have you spent? How many charging stations have you put in with that in the last 6 months? 7.
It's just so pathetic. The American people, you know what, are very bright. They really are. And they're catching on to this. Here's the problem for Kamala Harris. The problem for Kamala Harris is the last 3.5 years.
Yes.
That's the big problem for
maybe the last 30 years. But that's
the last 3.5 years of Joe Biden and his radical leftist policy. And she's not going to go out there and campaign against it. But the American people are living with that policy. Grocery prices, being told that you're going to have to get rid of that gas-operated car in a few years because we're going to make it so difficult for you.
Air conditioners,
yes,
refrigerators,
propane,
stoves,
yes,
all subject to the Green New Deal. Steve, in terms of this story with the Palestinian protesters, that could be a big problem for the Democratic Party at the convention, which is going to be at Chicago, and Jenna Ellis talked about 1968. Famously, that's the last time, I believe, the Democratic convention was in Chicago. There were riots. I wonder if the pro-Palestinian / anti-Israel wing of the Democratic Party, I wonder if they will trigger protests outside the convention.
I've heard a lot of people that have been wondering or kind of saying that the Democrat Party has sold their soul for a few votes in Minnesota, being that that's where the large anti-Semitic population lives, the pro-Hamas population.
And Michigan.
Right.
Yes.
Did I say Minnesota?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, both of those, but a couple states.
Mm-hmm.
Large Somali population
and other
in Minneapolis.
Right, and other pro-Hamas. So this, to me, is tells me who's wagging the dog. The tail is wagging the dog. The Democrat Party, at least as it has been up until this point, is terrified of their ultra-left.
Yes.
Of the AOCs and the
Rashida
Tlaibs and everything. And no one can quite, on this side of the aisle, no one can quite figure out why they're so terrified of them, because there's a lot more they stand to lose by embracing the anti-Semitic tropes and language.
Right.
It's going to be very interesting to hear what Benjamin Netanyahu says.
And we're just, 4 weeks?
19th of August.
19th of August.
Mm-hmm.
So we just passed, we're inside of a month.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
New candidate. It could be that they have a new. They could be that they have a new strategy. But Kamala, for all intents and purposes, is further left than Joe Biden was. So I think she's going to be.
It's hard to believe. I'm not doubting it. It's hard to believe that anyone could be further left, but she may be. By the way, we mentioned on occasion here inside our studio, we have a big screen TV, and Brent Creeley, our technologically savvy producer, has 4 different feeds on this screen.
Yes.
And I was watching, and at least half of them had images of Kamala Harris traveling, getting in and out of the vehicle. And so she's really taken to this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she is, as Jenna mentioned, she is the expected nominee when the convention finally gets around to voting. I don't know if technically she has enough votes, but she may have enough delegates that have already committed to her. But she is feeling it.
Oh,
because all the media coverage from the left is Kamala in a very kind of presidential role at this point.
Well, she didn't have to work for this. The Democratic Party wouldn't dare have chosen anybody else.
Yeah.
They wouldn't dare have bypassed Kamala Harris.
Right.
Because you know what would have happened? And put a white male.
Yeah, like Gavin Newsom from California.
Yeah.
I thought they might go for another white female, like Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, or even bring in Michelle Obama. I'm going to be wrong, I guess, when Tim comes back. I kept expecting Biden to go.
Mm-hmm.
We all did.
Yes.
But for the convention to draft Michelle Obama, it looks like it will be Kamala Harris.
All information we're getting is that she will not accept the nomination. She would not.
Michelle Obama?
She hated Washington. She didn't like the
Well, it was good for a while.
Yeah.
People thought, I might be right.
You know what's interesting, though, is when Democrats did have a choice of who they wanted to be on the ticket, they overwhelmingly ignored Kamala Harris. She dropped out of the race before the first primary.
She never got a single delegate.
Not a vote. She
was polling up well under 1%.
Yeah. So, now, she's the second coming of, Mahatma Gandhi or Indira Gandhi or whatever.
Right.
But at that point, no one wanted her. No one wanted her. So it's just interesting. The DEI is, if, go woke, go broke. Well, the Democrat Party is about to see if that translates to politics. As well.
All right, what else?
I have a disturbing story out of Greenville, South Carolina. There was a stabbing of with a sword, actually. Some lady that worked at a Christian women's shelter in Greenville, South Carolina, was stabbed in the parking lot by someone who wandered into the shelter. And I want you to hear the news coverage of this. This is what people in Greenville from a local TV station heard about this. Cut 16.
Greenville County, a woman is in custody after deputies say she stabbed an employee with a sword at a Miracle Hill women's shelter. We're told it happened at the shelter on Regency Hill Drive in Greenville this morning around 11 o'clock. Deputies say the suspect was upset about being evicted, and that started a disturbance. Deputies say that is when the stabbing happened. We're told the victim was taken to the hospital for surgery. This afternoon, the suspect is facing multiple charges, including attempted murder.
Well, so a woman attacked another woman in the parking lot.
It sounds like it.
The one who allegedly committed the crime got evicted from the woman's shelter.
Yeah.
So what's the big deal, Steve?
Well, it turns out the woman's name, the person who did the stabbing,
allegedly,
is Michelle Silva Perez. But he wasn't born Michelle Silva Perez.
He
was a transgender dude who was not allowed into the women's shelter by this Christian women's shelter because he's not a woman.
He's
you might have thought that would have been relevant.
Yes.
But no, we're not hearing any of that from the
Listen,
from the media.
even Fox has years ago here, Fred, gone with the pronouns of the transgender person,
Yes.
whatever they prefer.
Yep.
That's the way they refer to them. when this whole thing got started, we made note of the fact that what are the police going to do if you put out an all points bulletin on a 6-foot male who robbed a bank, and be on the lookout for 6-foot male, let's say 6-foot white male, suspected of robbing the bank, but the 6-foot male describes himself as a woman. Are the police going to say be on the lookout for a 6-foot white female when everyone's going to see a male? This is a perfect example of where that kind of reporting just not only denies reality, but is the opposite of news. This is not helpful at all.
To respond to your scenario, it depends on where that police department is.
Yeah.
I would say in a woke city like New York or Seattle, Portland, Oregon, they would go with the woke description.
Which means you won't catch the criminal.
Which means you won't catch the criminal. And innocent, if it's a violent individual, residents will not be alerted.
Right.
As to who to look for.
Yes.
Because that's kind of important.
Or to who to look out for.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So you're putting your population in jeopardy in order to follow a woke policy.
Yeah.
Because you might offend 1% of the population.
Where was this, Steve? This was in
Greenville, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
North Carolina.
Well, it's
South Carolina. Sorry.
Almost across the board, all news agencies, have gone with the woke approach.
Not AFN.
No, that's true. We will not. In fact, Fred, you have to frequently. We do have Associated Press stories that we run. You have to frequently go through those to correct that kind of reporting.
Oh, the whole transgender evolution into the news has caused us to spend a whole lot more time. We are allowed to edit the copy.
Right.
That we
get. That's in the contract we have.
That's in the contract that allows us to do that. But we have to step back and look at it because the Associated Press and other mainstream media automatically now go to the politically correct side of things. Right. But we are resisting that because we believe the Bible.
Yes.
A person is either born a male or a female, and just because you say you're something else doesn't make you. And quite frankly, it's not only biblical, it's scientific.
Right.
You know, my major in university was biology and chemistry. It's interesting. We could have a whole discussion. You know, I went through university back in the 70s.
Yeah.
When men were men and women were women.
Yes, and that's the way it was. Because in my biology classes, I went to a secular university. Yeah. There was no talk about now. They may have been born a he, but you know, he now feels like he's a she. Therefore, we need to be careful. I would love to see today's modern biology books.
Yes.
What are you doing with that?
Well, there are medical groups. I know in the UK. I'm not sure that this has come all the way across here to the U.S. that will say men can have babies.
Oh, I know.
It's really interesting. I was watching. Every so often I get on my Twitter feed. There's a video of like somebody. It's probably like Ben Shapiro or one of these guys that has a question and answer period with the liberals that come to his.
Charlie Kirk would do that too.
Well, this one, a particular one, this medical worker came up and said, "Women are women. It doesn't matter. They've always been women," and did the whole transgender line. And I don't know. I think it was Ben Shapiro said, "Okay, let me ask you a question. You get a call in your ambulance, and you're coming to this transgender person here, and he says he's having a miscarriage. Are you going to check?" Well, no.
Yeah, reality. That's reality.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What else we got?
All right. I'm going to pass on some information that Team Trump got from one of their pollsters. Just so to set expectations, this is what's going on inside the Trump campaign since the Kamala Harris elevation, inauguration, coronation, whatever you want to call it. Tony Fabrizio, who is one of their pollsters, sent a memo It says it's confidential. Apparently, I'm special because I have a copy of it.
Yes.
To Team Trump. And it says this: many of you have heard me referring to the Harris honeymoon that I expect to see in public polling over the next few weeks. She's going to have wall-to-wall coverage from the mainstream media. The coverage will be largely positive. And so what you can expect they will try to you're going to see some polls with Kamala closing the gap or even ahead of Donald Trump. He says it's a honeymoon. It's going to go away. Everything is so strange now. We don't know how long it's going to last. He doesn't even. But here's what he says. The Democrats and the mainstream media will try to tout these polls as proof that the race has changed, but fundamentals of the race stay the same. The Democrats deposing one nominee for another does not change voters' discontent over the economy, inflation, crime, the open border, housing costs, not to mention concern over 2 foreign wars. This is going to be the Trump campaign's line of attack. And so if you start to see in the next weeks, who knows how long, you start to see the polls come up and it looks like it's a tighter race. Yeah, it's a different race now. But there is still a lot to say about Kamala that
Republicans haven't said yet.
Yes, it's still yet to be said.
Fred, it is typical following a convention for there to be a bounce in the polls for the candidate/party that was most recently in the news, because that's what a convention did. You know, the Republican convention in July this month, had a lot of media attention, a lot of eyeballs.
Yep.
Relatively speaking, on what was going on.
Well, it happened right
bounce.
after the attempted assassination, too.
Yes.
Some of the audience size were huge. But here's the thing. You know, the polling that has been done earlier this year, earlier this year, when it showed an erosion in the black population, Hispanic population that traditionally voted Democrat. You know, they said they weren't moving away from the Democrats because of Joe Biden. They were moving away from the Democrats because of economic policies.
Yes.
They were moving away from the Democrats because of what's going on down at the border.
Right.
Those are the reasons they were given. They didn't say we don't like Joe Biden.
Crime,
economics, what's happening with all these illegals in New York and Chicago and other places like that. Kamala Harris doesn't change that. The economy is still in trouble. Gas prices are still high. You know, we still have the problem, God forbid, but I hope we do not see the manifestation. We know there are hundreds of people who are terrorists who have now entered this country through the southern border. God forbid that anything happens. But the potential for something to happen is far greater now than what it was.
Because of that open border.
Because of that open border 3 years ago. And so Kamala Harris will not be able to blame Donald Trump for that.
Right.
If that happens. Kamala Harris, what is she going to say about grocery prices? What is she going to say about crime? She cannot defend what Joe Biden has allowed and have credibility with that audience, you know, especially those Hispanic, the black population. So I am very anxious to see. Steve talks about polls. Yes, I agree. There's going to be a bump. But when it all settles down in September and October, I'm going to be anxious to see if those polling that we saw early in the year comes back to haunt Kamala Harris.
Any idea, Steve, if I know this is probably premature because we're just under a month away from the Democratic convention. And Kamala Harris really just over the last few days, the Democratic Party has made it clear they're behind her. Any talk, though, about who she might pick as a VP?
Everybody is kind of speculating about that, but I haven't heard anything like
probably way too early.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything like here's her list. We talked, I think, yesterday about the fact that Josh Shapiro would be on many lists, except that he's Jewish, and a lot of people have said that the Democrats wouldn't dare put a Jew on the ticket, which is anti-Semitic right from its face.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom from California. They're both from California.
Yeah.
Bringing Gavin Newsom in doesn't do anything for the ticket as far as winning a state. So there's other names being bandied about, governors of battleground states Democratic governors of battleground states, that would probably be her choice. She's running a DEI campaign, so also out there is the first, whatever.
Yeah.
Corinne Jean-Pierre, the first black lesbian vice presidential candidate.
What times we live in. Amazing. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today's show. We could go for another hour and a half easily and talk about all new stuff. But we don't have the time for that. We will take our best shot tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen the rest of the day? But I will tell you this, there is more great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. And as for today's issues, we invite you back tomorrow, Lord willing. We'll see you then.